Hey guys, it's Levi here and welcome back to another trip report. So as you can tell, I'm back here in my gaming room where I was about 3 to 4 months ago when I was doing my intro for my flight over to Perth with my dad flying as the first officer. Now, today will not be much of a domestic flight though. I'm actually going to be heading up to Singapore with my family for a holiday for about 7 to 8 days. So I'll be flying on the Singapore Airlines Boeing 787-10 DreamLiner, which is the longest variant in the family. Pretty ironically, I've flown on the 8 twice and now the 10. Still the 9 to go, which is the most common, but I'm sure we'll get there eventually because Qantas have them. So we're going to leave in about now, but I thought I'd show you guys a quick update on the arrival flight, which is SQ 279, which is obviously up here. It is a 787-10. It's got some pretty cool photos of it, especially that night one. So it's scheduled to arrive at 6:56, so it's looking a bit early. There's the rego for you, all the information about it, and it's currently on its way into Adelaide. So that should only be about an hour away, so we'll be, as I said, heading to the airport in about an hour. So I'll see you and film some of the drive there, and then I'll see you in the terminal. So now here I am on my way to Adelaide Airport. As we were driving there, it was very, very foggy, as it usually is on most winter mornings in Adelaide. We did leave the house at about 6 AM just before the sun rose, so it is usually quite foggy. Fortunately though, as we got down the hill and more to the flat areas of Adelaide, the fog cleared up and there was basically no fog, just overcast cloud. We got some pretty good views on our drive to the car park, like the maintenance area where the Rex Saab 340s sit for maintenance and the Qantas Link and Alliance E190s sit. Unfortunately, no E190s today, just the Saab 340s. So now I'm just grabbing my last belongings, grabbing my suitcase and walking to the terminal with my family. Adelaide Airport has currently just announced some pretty major renovation plans over the next few years. They're looking to get more gates and just make the insides newer. At the time of recording this, they hadn't renovated the interior, but since then they've actually added some new beige coloured seats with more padding and charging ports to all gates in the terminal, which is quite nice. But at the time, as I just said, at the time of recording this, unfortunately they hadn't done that yet, so I couldn't experience. But in my next travels, which should hopefully be not too far away, I'll be able to showcase that. So now my dad and I and the rest of the family are just heading in, and we're passing the Alliance check-in and the National Jet Express, which since I've recorded this, they've both actually moved upstairs to a new check-in area, and I'm not sure what they're doing with that area down the bottom, but I'm sure they'll probably maybe convert it to Rex or something, but who knows. So now I'm just heading up the elevator and then to the check-in area of Adelaide Airport. Because this was a Tuesday morning, I was expecting it to be not too busy, but it was actually quite busy for a Tuesday morning, or at least that's what I thought. Nonetheless though, now we're just heading to the Singapore Airlines check-in, which is all the way on the western side of the airport. We checked in using the kind of online tablet thing, but we did have quite a few technical difficulties with it, with putting in names, and it was not a very responsive screen at all. We all agreed as a family we'd much rather having a staff member check us in, because these tablets can just be an absolute nightmare. Like today, it took us 15 minutes to do it all. Nonetheless, we've just dropped our bags off now, which we did have help by a staff member, which was very nice. They had a staff member for everyone that was doing it, which was a very nice feature. Not every airline has that. So now we're just going through security, which had a pretty long line, but now actually since I've last been, Adelaide Airport has opened the new security screening, so they've kind of shut down the old ones and now just have the new kind of 360 ones. Not before long though, it took us about 20 minutes or so to go through security. I've just gotten a great view of the international aircraft today, which is the Malaysian Airlines A330-300 and the Qatar 777-300ER. So now I'm just heading through the Adelaide Airport terminal, which I do quite like. It's not the most spacious necessarily, but I always like the vibe of it. It really gives off South Australia. It has lots of wood and kind of just gives off wine region with some fake vines and stuff, but I personally really like it. Now we're heading to the customs, which I've personally not been down here since about 2020 when I went to Bali with my family. Passed through it pretty easily. My dad had to get double, triple checked for some reason. They always suspected him. It just ended up being his belt. But nonetheless, that didn't take too long for customs. Much better than going through Melbourne or Sydney. I do love Adelaide Airport in that regard. Now that we've passed through that, I got a great view of our aircraft today. It would be a 4-year-old Singapore Airlines Boeing 787-10 DreamLiner, with the registration of 9 Victor Sierra Charlie Quebec. I've never flown on the 787-10 before. I have flown on the Jetstar 787-8, but as I mentioned in my intro, I'm still waiting to fly on the 9, which is the most common variant, but I'm sure it won't be too long before I can do that. A pretty cool feature of the airport is the great views of the tarmac and the taxiways, gateways and everything. So we have this pretty great view of the Qatar 777 parked right next to ours, which will be heading down to Melbourne in not too long. Boarding commenced pretty quickly at 8:49 AM, which was about half an hour before schedule. So I'll just let you enjoy the boarding footage of us heading down to the aircraft and walking to our seats.
Second cabin, thank you.
So now, here is my seat for today, 65 Alpha. On your seat, you get a pillow and blanket, which I thought was very nice. Not every airline provides that. They were both really comfy and quite enjoyable to use throughout the flight. You have a very spacious seat pocket in front of you with stuff like the magazine, safety information card and sick bag. You also have a tray table that folds down and extends back and forth with 2 cup holders, so you can have it if you just want it half out or fully out. You also have a 3rd cup holder on your seat, which I thought was very nice. You also have a reading light and a flight attendant call button, along with a USB-C port. You also have a very large in-flight entertainment screen, which I thought was very nice as well, and a great view of the wing. You've also got, as I mentioned before, a Singapore Airlines branded sick bag, as well as the 787-10 safety information card, which I was always very tempted to steal, but obviously you're not really allowed to. It also had the instructions for how to connect to the Wi-Fi, which I thought was very, very nice, as not many airlines provide that, like Qantas, which, not from my knowledge, I know provide that. You've also got a Singapore Airlines magazine, so if you didn't bring any devices or anything like that, you have something to entertain you for. It may not entertain you for the whole 6.5 hour flight, but it will entertain you for some. You've also got a very comfortable and adjustable headrest, which I thought was very nice as well.
Seatbelt together until you hear a click. Tighten it by pulling on the strap. If you're in business class, pull the shoulder strap to fasten your seatbelt. To unfasten change in cabin pressure, an oxygen mask will automatically drop in front of you. Pull the mask down sharply. Place it over your mouth and nose, and breathe as usual. The rows of seats to the closest exit in front and behind you. Remove it from the plastic cover and slip it over your head. Pass the straps around your waist, connect the clip, and pull to tighten. Inflate the life vest by pulling the red tabs or blowing into During these times, charging your electronic devices is also not allowed. If you're not using, refer to the safety card located in the seat pocket in front of you for more information. On behalf of Singapore Airlines, we hope you have
We are pleased to be carrying passengers of Australia Alliance and all culture carriers. All electronic devices.
So now that we've just pushed back from our gate a couple minutes late, we will now begin our taxi to runway 05. If you didn't know, runway 05 is on the southwestern side of the 23/05 runway. Obviously, if we were taxiing to runway 23, it would only be about a minute taxi, but since it's 05, it probably will take about 5 minutes. Nonetheless, so I'd like to say a big thank you to Ronnie Cashman, so you have to go check out his YouTube channel. He was able to record my takeoff footage, so I will include his video as we roll out. Nonetheless though, please enjoy the takeoff footage and climb out of Adelaide, and I'll speak to you in a couple minutes after the takeoff footage, so please enjoy.
Fun holiday, Levi.
So, I hope you enjoyed those takeoff views and climb out of Adelaide. Before we go any further, I'd like to give another big thank you and shout out to Ronnie Cashman for recording my takeoff. So please go check out his YouTube channel, drop him a like on his newest videos, and give him a subscribe. That would be much appreciated from me, and I'm sure from him as well. So I thought after, well, going through the editing of all this, I thought I'd show kind of the flight playback on Flight Radar 24 of our route. We took a very southern route on my flight due to some high-level winds that were rolling over Australia at the time. So we actually ended up heading over Broome and then over Jakarta. I've never personally been to Jakarta. I've been to Indonesia since I've been to Bali, but I was surprised at how dense it was. Not long after takeoff, the crew came around with some hot towels, which I thought was very, very nice, since you don't find that at all really on flights and it's quite rare. Unfortunately, I wanted to get some good views for you guys of the kind of Australian landscape, but unfortunately the crew had kind of dimmed and locked the windows, so I couldn't actually undimm them, so I couldn't get any good views. They were okay, I guess, just a bit of a blue tint. A cool thing about the in-flight screen in front of you is it actually has kind of like a flight simulator look, so you can have a whole look around your plane and the route you're taking, as well as kind of like a HUD, so head-up display kind of view of your flight, which I thought was very, very cool. So now I'm kind of just showing you so that it's fully interactive, it's fully touchscreen. You can actually have a look at what your flight will do. It's a projected flight path, I guess you could say, which I thought was very cool. So now I'll quickly just also head through the in-flight entertainment screen and what it has to offer. So you've got heaps of things from movies to shows to live news, which I personally am into quite, you know, what's going on in the world, politics, that kind of thing. So I was on there for most of the flight. Had like CNN, BBC, all that kind of thing. It has plenty of movie options and shows, not like necessarily Singaporean or Asian, but heaps of Western films as well, which was quite nice. Had some also games for little kids, which I thought was great. And obviously, as a nav geek, I was mainly on either the news or the in-flight map, obviously, as most of us are, kind of raw dogging the whole flight just on the in-flight map. It also had other things on there, like how to connect to the Wi-Fi and stuff, which I thought was great. Another thing to quickly mention was, as you can obviously see in this video playing right now, we did have some moderate to kind of severe turbulence as we were only about an hour into the flight. We actually did something which was really weird. We actually went up to 30,000, then we went up to 34, and then we went up to 36 within the first hour and a half. So we actually did 3 flight levels. Nonetheless, so besides the mild turbulence that we had initially, the crew came around within the first about 2 hours to hand out some snacks. They were kind of like a pea snack cracker thing. They were quite nice. They were a little bit plain, not super seasoned, but it wasn't the main meal or anything. It was just a quick snack, so I wasn't that bothered at all. They also came around asking for drinks, so I went with just a water to start with. A pretty cool thing I was also able to record around this time was a overhead view of Streaky Bay. I was only in Streaky Bay about 6 months ago with my family as we were on a road trip, but now seeing it from the air, it is pretty crazy that it only takes about an hour and a half to fly there, but it takes about a 10-hour drive to get there by car, which is, I found, pretty crazy, but that's just how great planes are, and I'm so grateful and thankful that they are a thing. I love them, they're awesome. Nonetheless though, I was able to connect to the Wi-Fi. It was a bit of a hassle. My iPad was just not connecting for some reason. It was showing up in settings and I could click on it, but all it had was a loading screen and it was just not working for the first hour I tried. I tried again about half an hour later and it ended up working, so I was able to check flight radar and stuff, which was pretty cool. About 3 hours into the flight, the crew came around with lunch, which I thought was quite a long time after departure, but I guess we did leave at about 9 AM, so they did serve it at about midday, which was pretty reasonable. I went for the chicken and veg, which was actually surprisingly very good. It looked quite dry to start with and not super scrumptious, but I ended up trying the potato, the chicken and the veg, and they were all very great. The only negative I would say were the vegetables were a bit dry. The chicken was actually quite juicy and great. The potato was juicy and full of flavour, and it was also quite warm. The whole meal was great. I have found on a lot of airplane foods they come out cold, since especially when you're at the back and they've been sitting in the tray the whole time, but this one was actually really good. Only thing, as I just said before, was the vegetables were a bit plain, bit dry, not the best, so I ended up leaving a few of them, but otherwise overall meal was a solid 8 out of 10. After having my meal, I went to go check out the bathroom, which was surprisingly clean and very well laid out. They had Singapore branded stuff everywhere, like on there, as you can see, like hand sanitizer, which I thought was quite nice. Very clean bathroom. They had 2 coat hooks if you needed them. I love doing this part. Great mood lighting, which was blue, which is Singapore Airline colours, and the floor was a bit dirty. I don't know if they cleaned it in Adelaide, didn't seem so, but otherwise it was pretty good. After I went to the bathroom, I came out and on my tray table was actually an ice cream, which was amazing. Honestly, not only the best ice cream I've had in the air, but probably one of the best ice creams I've had in my life. It was really good. I can't remember exactly where it was from. It may have actually been from like the Barossa Valley or McLaren Vale in Adelaide, but it was absolutely incredible, and I wish I could just buy tubs of it now and have it. So this footage right here was actually just before we received our meal service, so I just put it behind here because I wanted to show what the meal service was like before more of the unimportant stuff. I was on flight radar and was actually able to track heaps of the aircraft that were flying out of Darwin for the exercise that we're doing here in Australia with the United States of America and the United Kingdom. So there are a bunch of like A330 tankers, KC-40s from the United States, and lots of like RAAF C-130s and stuff. There are even a couple of Air New Zealand aircraft, not Air New Zealand, my bad, Royal New Zealand Air Force aircraft flying out of here as well, which was pretty cool. We didn't fly directly over them or anything, but we did fly in pretty close proximity to them, and I'm sure there's probably a bunch of fighter jets out there as well. So now that we've left Australia and are almost about to fly over Indonesia, the cabin crew actually came around with a second meal service, which was the choice of, when it got to us, only a kind of chicken pie pastry thing. It was actually really, really nice. It actually kind of not blew me away. It wasn't like Gordon Ramsay level or anything, but it was absolutely amazing and so much better than what I've always thought of aeroplane food to be. All the food today actually has really surprised me and passed what my expectations were. I had them pretty high and they actually surpassed that. The cabin crew also came around with drinks, offering a second drink service, so this time I went with an orange juice, which was very, very nice. Now that we've kind of gotten all the meal services out of the way and are about to fly to Indonesia, I thought I would test the window dimming on the 787-10. So this is it on the clearest setting, and now I've just turned it dark. So it'll slowly, as you see, gradually turn darker and darker now that I've just switched the button to the darker setting. As you can see here, it slowly gets darker and darker, kind of like a darker and darker blue from a clear. And then as you turn it up, it will go right back to bright and regular. I think this is a pretty cool feature, but I actually have to admit I do sometimes prefer having the kind of sliding one, because that way if you just want half of the window to be open to get some sunlight in and some not, you can, whereas on these you either have to have full or none. So now that all that is out of the way, please enjoy some views and I'll speak to you in a few minutes. So now, here I am, approaching Singapore, only about an hour to an hour and a half away. We've just flown over the huge city of Jakarta, which is the capital of Indonesia, and as I mentioned earlier in my trip report, I was blown away at how dense it is. I actually had a friend that just came over from a bit of a family holiday to Jakarta, and even he said he was like so surprised at how just busy and dense the city is compared to somewhere like Adelaide. On our arrival into Singapore, I was on Flight Radar and checking all the traffic, and it was very, very busy with heaps of like Scoot E190s and A320s coming in. So we had to just do one quick circuit, so a bit of a 360 to the left, before then descending into Singapore. One thing my dad did notice, as he's a 737 first officer, was that we put the flap out at a very high altitude, where he was assuming it was so that we could slow down and let other traffic in, but we had flap out at 10,000 feet, which was very, very odd. Also on the climb out of Adelaide, the pilots only retracted the flap up at about 10,000 as well, so we both weren't sure if this was like a 787 kind of thing, or if that's a Singapore Airlines thing, or it was just a coincidence that they both had to do it. Nonetheless, so we got some pretty cool views flying over a tiny bit of Malaysia as we were heading on the approach into Singapore. Pretty cool like flame factory going on down there, and heaps of cloud, as is usual to Singapore as it's on the equator, or at least very close. Now we've only got a few left-hand banks to go before arriving into Singapore. So for the conclusion of this flight, I was flying from Adelaide to Singapore on the Singapore Airlines Boeing 787-10. The meal service was great, the cabin crew were great, no complaints about the cabin crew or the food. Only maybe complaint about the food was the vegetables, but besides that, everything else was great. Drinks were great. Check-in process, the tablet could have been better. It was quite unresponsive, and not having a crew member there or staff from Adelaide Airport or Singapore Airlines to assist you was a bit annoying, so it was only digital. Business passengers did get a person, but unfortunately if you're flying economy you only had that. In-flight entertainment was great. The whole flight along the journey was quite smooth, but obviously that's not something the airline can do. Otherwise, please enjoy the landing footage onto runway 20 Centre at Singapore Changi Airport, and I'll speak to you on the taxi and when we arrive to our gate, so please enjoy. Runway. Like never. So now, here we are in Singapore. This would be my second Asian country I've visited after Indonesia, which I've been to about 2 to 3 times. So as my dad and I were very keen to go up and have a look at the DreamLiner cockpit, as we just didn't have time when we were in Honolulu too, we asked the cabin crew to go up to see the cockpit, and they initially agreed, but unfortunately we ended up finding out by the pilots that you're not actually allowed to go into the cockpit nor take videos or photos at Singapore Airlines, which I found quite unfortunate. So this footage is just my dad and I, we were the last basically to get off. So this is just passing through the business section, which I have to say these seats look very nice. I'd love to fly on these one day. But obviously this is all the footage I've got now. I did speak to the pilots, shook their hand. They said that they'd absolutely love to show me around, but unfortunately company policy, you're just not allowed to. I did have a quick gift for them, which was just a Boeing tag to maybe put on their travel suitcase or something, or just to take home. They seemed very appreciative and they were absolutely lovely, but yeah, unfortunately company policy is company policy, so I don't want to get them in trouble. But the cockpit of the DreamLiner did look sick. Couldn't take any photos, but it looked awesome. So here's just some footage of Singapore Changi Airport. It is currently ranked the best airport in the world, I think. I don't know if Qatar's taken over yet again after Doha. I think they're kind of just battling it out at the moment, but I have to say this airport was incredible. Compare it to somewhere like Sydney or Melbourne, which is where most people would arrive entering Australia. To tell you what, this just blows it out of the park. There was greenery everywhere. It was so well maintained. It was absolutely gorgeous. Love to go back just for the airport and just spend like a day roaming around. Nonetheless, so we're just going to pick up our bags now and head outside, where we're going to wait for our chauffeur to our hotel. We were staying at the city centre Furama, which is basically, as in the name, in the city centre. It was absolutely a great location. So this is basically the end of the trip report, so I thank you all so much for watching. I do have about 5-ish minutes of footage of the drive to the hotel and of inside the hotel if you're interested. But obviously there's not going to be anything else aviation related, so if you're here for that side of things, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure to like, subscribe and turn on notifications if you haven't already. Otherwise, if you're interested in what Singapore kind of looks like from a car perspective, so please stick around, enjoy the footage of the drive there. And I'll speak to you guys if you continue watching just for about 15 seconds at the very end. Nonetheless, just enjoy some car footage of driving to the airport and of the hotel, and I'll speak to you soon. So now this is the end of my video. I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below your thoughts. Make sure to turn on notifications so you don't miss out on another video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.